Hello, everybody. This is SQL Dan. I'm coming at you today on Sunday, June 9th, with another question from the Snowflake forums. And the question that I'm addressing today has to do with some diagnosis codes from a medical database. And actually, I kind of like this question because I worked in a hospital database for 20 years. So it's just kind of fun to see the data set. But you don't have to understand that at all in order to be able to solve the question or follow along. So the question that is being asked by Ron Kumar Narayanan has to do with the data set that I'm displaying here. And here's the way that he explains it. And it's not really super clear from his explanation nor from his example output exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to talk through that in just a second. But first, I'd just like to read his instructions. He says, I want to keep distinct values in the diagnosis code value within each line sequence, and the diagnosis code value must be unique, and it should not be already available in any other line sequence. And he provided us with 13 records here as his sample data. And then he has his desired results with 5 records being output. There was answers given earlier yesterday that used analytic SQL and the qualify keyword. And the qualify keyword is kind of like having is to group by. Basically allows you to apply a filter to the output from analytic SQL. But the poster came back and said, well, because he's doing this in Databricks, he doesn't think it's going to work with qualify. So I'm removing that from the possibility of solutions that I'm going to be talking about here. But anyway, let's move along and talk about his data set that he has. Now, I put it into a spreadsheet and I tried to divide it up, and essentially this is his 13 records that we see on the left here. And notice I'm saying logic alternative number 2 because looking at his output, there's a couple of different ways that this could be interpreted. So essentially he's saying, and I took one more liberty here too. This line sequence in the actual data set has 3 leading zeros on it. So just to keep it cleaner right now, I took those off because they don't have any impact on the uniqueness of the records. But in the end, I did output them to go on. So anyway, he has a couple of records with a line sequence of 1, and both of them have diagnostic code value of N542. And so we see that that's the first record that he wanted output. Now he wanted distinct, and he said he wanted distinct for the line sequence. In that case, that was really easy. So there's no question from the first record how that got derived. Now where I start to run into problems is in the second and third record in his output. So I believe that as I read this one more time, that he says he wants to keep distinct values within each line sequence, and the diagnostic code must be unique and must not already be available in any other line sequence. Okay, so from the best I can interpret that, he wants unique values from here, and he doesn't want it to show up if it has already showed up. Okay? The problem is that in his output right here, he has only 1 record per line sequence. Okay, so as I first read this, when I say, well, there's unique values, this N9903 certainly is unique and has not appeared previously. This N2511 or 25511 is unique and has not appeared previously. And N62838 is unique and has not appeared previously. Then the next one down in 542, um, still unique within the line sequence, but has already appeared. So that would get us to these first four values that we have here. Well, the first one from above, but the next three, number 2, 3, and 4, okay, would all be picked up by that if we say those are unique values from there. The challenge that I have is that all of these are from line sequence number 2, but in his output he has line sequence 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I thought, well, maybe I wasn't understanding the question properly, and maybe he wants something a little bit different. So maybe he just wants the first one that's unique from the group. So by doing that, I can get the 9903 from group 2. And then if I move down to line sequence number 3, there's the 2511 511. It's the first one that showed up. And again, it was in 3. So even though it had appeared 2, once we had one from 2, we moved on to the next group to get the first one that was unique and distinct from here. And that then caused me to ignore the 62838 and also to ignore this other 25511 because I had already pulled that. So then in group 4 down here, line sequence 4, 9903 I don't pick because I already picked it up on line sequence number 2. Then the next one in 62838, we've seen it before, but we didn't pick it up from group 3 because we only picked up one from group 3. So in this case, I pick up in 62838 and it gets assigned to number 4. The problem that I have is that the next record in his sample data is in 4040 with a line sequence of 5. And there is a 4040 right here, but it's in line sequence 4. And it's not in sequence 5 at all. So I don't know how we end up with this result unless my interpretation of this logic is not correct and it has to be done some other way. So now I'm going to move to alternative 1, and alternative 1 is what I ended up coding. And let's talk about this. So instead of relying on the line sequence as it appears in the data right here, what I instead think he intends for us to do is to select records and then number the line sequence afterwards. And keep them in the same order. So let me talk that through really quick. So again, the first one is, there's no issue there. It's in line sequence 1. There's 2 of them. We get the unique one. And we're just going to go ahead, it's the first one. And so we put sequence 1 on there. Okay. So moving down from there, we're just going to find every time that a diagnostic code value appears that we haven't seen before. And basically we're going to ignore these line sequences that appear in the data and just say every time one of these values shows up that we haven't seen before, we're going to stick it over here in our result set. So we get in 9903, and then we get in 25511, and we get in 62838, and then we did not pick up in 542. And so you can see the ones that I marked with the X's are the ones that the logic gets picked up. And this logic continues to hold as I move down through all of these other ones. The first new one that shows up after those first 4 is this in 4040 right here. And so we pick in 4040 as well. So after we've picked all those, we can still maintain the order of them. So in that case, the line sequence and the diagnostic code number does matter because we can use it for ordering. But then we assign unique numbers to each one. So I think that's what he did in his response. Now, I typed a response to him asking for a little bit more clarification because it's not entirely clear how he makes the leap from the source data to the output. But given my best interpretation, that's what I think is happening. However, there's still yet one more problem, and that is we have N25512, which appears in the source data and doesn't appear in the output um, at all. So I believe that it would be record number 6 in the output. I believe that he just only showed us the first 5 records, because that's the only way that I can make it fit the pattern. So anyway, you can see a logic alternative ones. I'm selecting the records that have the X's next to them, and I'll also be selecting this bottom one right here. Okay, and in logic number 2, again, I'm selecting the ones with the X's, and then the question mark says I don't understand because this one doesn't fit the pattern, which is why I ultimately decided to go ahead and code this. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I'm going to jump over to the data now. Spent more time explaining the data than it'll actually take to explain the solution. So I've created a temporary table with his data, and that's what we see here, the temporary table that I just called Diagnostic X. And then there are the 13 records. And I just say select from there just to see the records are here in the data. Okay. The next thing that I did is I used an analytic function for row number, okay, to assign an index for each one as it appears. And basically, what did I do here? That appears to be okay. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay. I'm not sure what had happened there. But basically, we're going to maintain the order. Maintain the order that he had in his data set. So we have an order by of claim ID and line sequence. And so let's go back over there. Now every record here has a claim ID, but I'm certain that if he had included more than one, that we would definitely want to reset our counts on claim ID as well. And so I guess that's where my domain knowledge happened to come into play just a little bit. But anyway, we want to do that on claim ID, and then order by line sequence, and then diagnosis code as our tiebreakers. Okay, and so we see that is each one of these diagnosis code values appears for the first time. It gets numbered 1, and then moving on down, the row number function assigns a 2, a 3, or whatever. So in this case, as I've mentioned, the actual line sequence numbers don't particularly matter. The only thing that really matters is the first time that each one of these appears within this claim ID, and we only use this for ordering of the records. So when I do that, like I said, you saw those X's, but you can also see these 1s appearing for every place that each one of these appears. And so essentially, step 2 of this is going to be just to select out the records where the row number equals 1s. So this is my way to avoid using the qualify, since the poster had told us that he couldn't use qualify where he's going to be running this query, or at least he didn't think he could. So we're going to have to select out where these row numbers equal 1. So I called this column index, and then we're going to nest this query in a minute, and we're going to select out all of the ones where index equals 1. Now, because it's important that we keep the ordering in place, I also wanted to make sure that I use the ordering so that I can renumber the sequence after the fact. So we're going to select all of these with 1s, all right? And then after we do that, we're going to need to do the line sequence. And let me comment out that part real quick here. Again, here's the same query. It's nested in this from clause right here, and you can see my where clause outside of the nesting says where index equals 1. And you can see that I just have the diagnosis codes and each record appearing only once. Now, they're not in proper order necessarily, so that's where it was important for me also to keep track of what order they were in as they came in to the query, so that I can use that now to assign a new row number on the outside of it. So that is what you're seeing here on line 32, is I'm assigning a row number partitioned by claim ID using the ordering that comes from the nesting inside the query. When I run that, you can see that I've now ended up with the new renumbered line sequences. So not necessarily what line sequence it came from, but just strictly keeping the ordering that we had. And again, I tell you that I think that record number 6 would have to be this. He didn't put it in his output, but we don't have any reason to throw it out, so I believe it's the next one down after that. And then I padded the row number on this outer part right here from the ordering with zeros in front, just to get the line sequence looking like it did before. So that's the solution. I have it posted on the Snowflake forum website. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned a little bit, and you can see how you can apply these, or how you can use these analytic functions together to accomplish some pretty cool logic. If you did, I hope you give the video a like, and if you like the way that I explain things in Snowflake, I hope you'll subscribe, because I always have more videos coming up. But as for now, thanks for watching, and this is SQL Dan saying so long for now.